Another story that came in. Remember what I said about finding out about betrayal from someone else? I have never had any kind of cancer in my life. Why on earth would you ask me that? Those were the words my sister-in-law said to my 14-year-old daughter on the phone 1 week before my daughter's 14th birthday party. My daughter recorded the call by accident on her iPhone. She showed me the recording 3 nights later because she could not stop thinking about what her aunt had told her. Because for the previous 11 months, my wife had told me her sister was dying of stage 2 breast cancer. She had flown 1,000 miles every 3 weeks to help with chemotherapy treatments she was never actually attending. She had spent over $18,000 of our marital funds on hotel rooms and dinners with a man she had reconnected with on Facebook 18 months earlier. And the 9 words my sister-in-law said to my 14-year-old daughter that afternoon ended my 18-year marriage in less time than it takes to brush your teeth. I am a dentist in Pennsylvania. I opened my dental practice 4 years before I ever met my wife, which becomes a $247,000 legal point later in this story. We have been married 18 years and we have 2 kids, a 16-year-old son and a 14-year-old daughter. Our daughter is the reason I am not still paying for an affair right now. She is also the reason I am about to lay out 11 months of her mother's lies in the next 17 minutes. But before any of that, 18 months ago, my wife reconnected with an old college boyfriend on Facebook. He had been her boyfriend for 2 years before she ever met me, 20 years before our wedding. He had been married to his own wife for 14 years. He had 2 kids of his own at home. He lived 6 blocks from my wife's older sister, in a city exactly 1,000 miles away from where my dental practice paid our mortgage every month. And in the 18 months after my wife sent him a Facebook friend request, 4 things in our house changed. She started locking the bathroom door every time her iPhone was in her hand. She started buying lingerie I never saw her wear one single time. She started going to a gym 5 nights a week, and she lost 24 pounds in 5 months. And she started telling me she was too tired for intimacy every single night. For the first time in 18 years of marriage, I noticed every one of those changes. I told myself I was being paranoid every single time. And then one evening, my wife sat me down on our living room couch and told me her older sister had just been diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. The diagnosis had come back from a routine mammogram 4 days earlier. Her sister was 47 years old, had 2 small kids at home, and had a husband who worked offshore on an oil rig 3 weeks out of every month. Her sister needed family there during chemotherapy treatments, and my wife told me she was going to be the one to go. I asked if I should fly out with her on the first trip. She said no, and she gave me 3 reasons that I did not question for the next 11 months. Reason 1, the kids would be too disruptive in a chemo recovery house. Reason 2, her sister did not want anybody to see her looking sick from chemo. Reason 3, she needed me to keep the dental practice running and stay home with our kids. She told me she would fly out every 3 weeks and stay for 4 to 5 days each trip. She told me she would handle every piece of logistics herself: flights, hotels, food, treatment schedules. She told me her sister did not want phone calls from me because the cancer made her feel ugly, and I told her I supported every word of it. I told her our family would absorb every flight, every hotel night, and every meal she paid for out there. And for the next 11 months, every 3 weeks like clockwork, my wife packed a suitcase, kissed me, and got on an airplane to a city she was not actually visiting her sister in. She came home from every single trip exhausted and emotionally drained. She cried in our bed at night about chemo side effects that were not happening. She refused intimacy because she was too tired and too emotional from caregiving she was not doing. She controlled every single piece of communication between our household and a sister-in-law who was not sick. I never spoke to my sister-in-law directly during any of those 11 months because every single time I asked to call her, my wife told me her sister was sleeping or in treatment or just not feeling up to a conversation. Until the afternoon before my daughter's 14th birthday party, when my 14-year-old little girl pulled out her iPhone and played me a voice recording that erased every single one of those 11 months in 2 minutes and 18 seconds. My daughter turned 14 last month. Her actual birthday fell on a school night, so we scheduled the birthday party for that upcoming weekend. My wife was on one of her sister trips during the week of the birthday and was flying home the morning of the party. The afternoon before the party, my daughter sat on our living room couch with tears running down her face. She told me her aunt had not even sent her a happy birthday text message. My daughter and her aunt used to FaceTime every couple of weeks, but those calls had stopped 11 months earlier when my wife had told everybody her sister was too sick to talk. I told my daughter exactly what my wife had told me to tell her, that her aunt was probably having a rough day with treatment and would reach out when she felt better. She said, "Dad, I talked to her last week." I said, "What?" She said, "I called her on her cell phone 8 days ago because I missed her, and she sounded totally fine." She said, "When I asked her how chemo was going, she told me she had no idea what I was talking about." She said, "She told me she had never had any kind of cancer in her entire life." I told my daughter she must have misunderstood the conversation. I told her she must have heard her aunt wrong. She said, "Dad, I had her on speaker because I was painting my nails while we talked." She said, "Voice memos was running on my phone the whole time from a history project I was recording earlier that afternoon." She said, "I have the entire conversation recorded by accident." She pressed play, and for the next 2 minutes and 18 seconds, I sat on the same couch in the same living room of the house I had been paying the mortgage on for 14 years, and I listened to my sister-in-law tell my 14-year-old daughter in plain English that she had never been diagnosed with cancer, that she did not know why anybody had told my daughter she was sick, and that she had not actually seen my wife in person in almost 6 months. When the recording stopped, my daughter looked up at me and asked one question. She said, "Dad, what is Mom really doing on those trips?" I told her I did not know yet, but I told her I was going to find out before her mother got back from the airport the next day. I walked into my home office that night at 11:18 p.m. and closed the door behind me. I did not come out of that room for 4 hours and 26 minutes. I pulled 14 months of credit card statements off our online banking portal and printed every page. I laid every single statement across my desk. Every 3 weeks for 11 months, the same pattern showed up on my wife's card. The same airline, the same chain hotel, the same handful of restaurants in a city 1,000 miles from our home. But other charges had been hiding in those same statements that I had never paid attention to before that night. Charges at a high-end jewelry store I had never set foot in. Charges at a lingerie boutique I had never seen her wear one piece of clothing from. Charges at a $240 a night hotel located 4 miles from my sister-in-law's actual home address, which meant my wife had been booking her own hotel room every single trip instead of staying at her supposedly dying sister's house. I added every charge up at 2:34 a.m., $18,400 of our joint marital money in 11 months on what I had been told was caregiving for cancer. The next morning, before my wife landed at the airport, I picked up my phone and called my sister-in-law directly for the first time in 11 months. She answered on the second ring. I told her I needed her to be honest with me about something, and within 90 seconds, she was furious. She told me she had never been treated for any kind of cancer in her life. She told me her health was perfect. She had run a half marathon 6 months earlier. She told me she had seen my wife exactly once over the past year, for less than 2 hours over a single afternoon. She told me my wife had been calling her once a month for 4-minute check-ins, but had never once asked to visit. And she told me she had no idea what my wife had been doing for 4 or 5 days every 3 weeks in her city. By 8:18 a.m., I had pulled the call detail records off our family cell phone plan. One phone number had been called from my wife's cell phone 612 times in the previous 18 months, a number with the same area code as my sister-in-law's city, a number that had never shown up on a phone bill before 18 months earlier. I plugged the number into a reverse lookup service for $4.99. The name that came back belonged to a man. I went on Facebook and searched the name with my wife's name in the same query. The first result was a man who had graduated from my wife's college 20 years before our wedding, a man who was Facebook friends with my wife, and the only post she had not liked of his in the past 18 months was a photo of his wife, a man who lived 6 blocks from where my sister-in-law lived, a man whose vacation photos my wife had commented on with language I would not write down on in this story, and a man whose country club golf rounds I had been paying for through my wife's credit card to the tune of $280 an afternoon for 8 months. I closed my laptop at 3:44 a.m., and I decided right there that the woman flying home from a fake cancer trip the next morning was not going to spend one more night under my roof as my wife. I called a divorce attorney at 8:23 a.m. the next morning while my wife's plane was still in the air. I sat in his conference room at 10:08 a.m. with a folder containing 14 months of credit card statements, 612 phone calls to a single number, a written statement from my sister-in-law, and the audio file of my daughter's recorded phone call. My attorney spent 38 minutes going through every page in silence. Then he leaned back in his chair and told me 4 things that were about to happen. First, Pennsylvania recognizes adultery as a fault ground for divorce under Section 3301 of the Divorce Code, and I had documentary evidence of an 11-month affair. Second, under Section 3501, the dental practice I had opened 4 years before, our wedding date was 100% my separate property. The equipment, the building, the patient list, and every dollar of business income going forward. Third, under Section 3502, the $18,400 my wife had spent on hotels and dinners with the man she was having an affair with was textbook dissipation of marital assets, and the court could reimburse me before equitable distribution even started. Fourth, under Section 3701, the judge could reduce or deny her spousal support request based on marital misconduct alone. My attorney filed the divorce petition the next morning and attached every piece of evidence to the petition itself. My wife was served the papers by a sheriff at her school district office at 2:14 p.m. that afternoon in the parking lot in front of 2 coworkers. She called me 11 minutes later from her car. She told me there had been a misunderstanding and she could explain everything. She told me her sister had been in remission for the last 3 months and she had just not told me yet because she did not want to jinx it. I told her my attorney would be in touch with her attorney and ended the call. She called me 14 more times in the next 3 hours. I did not answer one of them. Her attorney called my attorney 4 days later and asked if we could discuss a quiet settlement before the case went public. We declined. My wife was deposed 4 months after she was served. Her own attorney warned her not to mention the cancer story under any circumstances. She mentioned it anyway under direct questioning. She testified under oath that her sister had been in remission for the past 3 months. My attorney handed her the audio recording of her sister telling my 14-year-old daughter that she had never been diagnosed with cancer in her life. My wife sat silent for 18 seconds. Her attorney called a recess. Her attorney filed for the same settlement my attorney had offered 4 months earlier the very next morning for 22% less money. 6 months and 11 days after the original filing, the final divorce decree was signed by a Pennsylvania family court judge. I kept the dental practice in full, every patient file, every piece of equipment, every dollar of past and future income. I kept 65% of the marital home equity instead of the standard 50 because of the dissipation reimbursement. She was ordered to pay me back $16,400 from her share of the marital assets for the funds spent on the affair. She was ordered to cover $8,200 of my attorney fees because of the bad faith conduct documented in the petition. Her requested 8 years of monthly spousal support was denied in full based on marital misconduct. The judge specifically cited the fabricated cancer story in the final order, calling it a pattern of fraud and deception that defeated her claim to spousal support under Section 3701. She moved 1,000 miles away within 4 months of the divorce being finalized. By the time she got there, his wife had already filed for divorce against him too, and she had hired an attorney 5 times more aggressive than mine. Last I heard, he is now paying his ex-wife $6,000 a month in alimony for the next 9 years. My daughter came with me to court for the final hearing. She sat in the back row of the courtroom while the judge read the order out loud. She watched her mother sign the final decree. She did not say one word the entire drive home. That night she came into my office and asked me if she could call her aunt. I told her she could call her aunt anytime she wanted to for the rest of her life. I want every man listening to this video to take 2 things away from this story. The first thing is this: your kids see more than you think they see. My 14-year-old daughter caught a lie that I had missed for 11 straight months because she had a relationship with her aunt that did not have to go through her mother. She caught it because she picked up a phone one afternoon and called somebody she missed. She caught it because her iPhone happened to be recording when her aunt said the 9 words that mattered, and she had the courage to play that recording for her father, even though she did not understand what any of it actually meant. If you have children, keep them connected to the rest of your family. Do not let one parent be the only conduit to grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins, because someday your 14-year-old daughter might be the one who hands you the evidence that saves the rest of your life. The second thing is this: when something feels off in your marriage, trust your gut and pull the records. I noticed every single one of those 4 changes 18 months before the divorce. I told myself I was being paranoid every time, and I was wrong every time. If your gut is telling you something is wrong, pull the phone bills, pull the credit card statements, and let the math tell you the truth. Trust the math. Trust your kids. Trust your gut. As Tony always says, pay attention. Just pay attention. I didn't, but my daughter did.